Hey folks, we're back with another Retro Rides podcast, and this time we have a Retro Rides alumni, a man that has been around our forum since we were a forum, and his name is Rob Richardson, which is a name you may or may not recognise, but the name Racer86, more of you probably will. He has built a number of very cool cars, quite iconic cars, and I know a number of people that cite him as an influence, including myself. He has climbed the ladder of the automotive industry and now is an engineer at Jaguar Land Rover, and as well as doing various bits of freelance photography and writing and stuff like that. So it's great to catch up with you, Rob. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Quite the introduction.
You're quite the man.
Lovely. I'll take that. I did actually look, and it was 2004. I actually joined the forum originally, which was the very beginning-ish, wasn't it? I think.
Yep. You were there within the first few months, which is a shockingly long time ago, which I don't like to think about. So I'm going to start you with our first question, which is why cars?
Ooh, it's a good one, isn't it? This is where the parental reference comes out, and there is some of that, but I guess going right back. So I lived in the Peak District, which immediately distances you from everyone in and around you. So the need for transport and freedom and escape was prevalent from an early age. So mechanical things from push bikes to go-peds to all that sort of stuff featured heavily. And my dad was the classic dad line, but he was very much into motorbikes when he was younger and never really did the car thing. The car thing came about from necessity of keeping him on the road more than actually, being a diehard, passionate petrol head in that respect. But it meant there was always interesting cars around, usually, Fiat Panda 4x4s and 2CVs and that kind of stuff that were always being worked on and kept on the road. But just more generally, things in the garage were always being taken apart and put back together. At one point he had a telescope that filled an entire garage that he kind of bought as spare parts and built up, and weird stuff from coffee makers to cameras, and it's always been things apart and going back together. And I was sort of raised kind of in and around that, which was really, really nice. But cars was pretty much all me. So I remember I had a friend, I was probably 14, and her mum had a Citroen 2CV, funnily enough, which was a running theme. And she gave it me because it failed its MOT and they couldn't get it through anymore. And I sort of got that up and running and back together and sold it for the princely sum of £150, which kind of 14 years old was a king's ransom. And between that and a motorbike I was given, that also didn't run, and I got running and sold and swapped, worked my way up to one of those California go-peds. Do you remember those little folding petrol scooters?
Oh yes, I remember them. Yeah.
So I used to have a paper round, and at 6 a.m. I used to fly around and do a paper round on this scooter, which made me really, really popular, and commute, I think it's like 6 or 8 miles to the next village on it to go and get my wages every weekend. So but then that got modified and taken to bits, and the compression ratio increased and the timing modified to get a bit more oomph out of it, so it'd do 32 miles an hour instead of 30, and that was kind of it. And it sort of sows a seed and an approach to just mechanical things that it was cars that really really excited me. So coming up to being 17, I already had my eyes on, I had to have a Mini. It's like the classic first car of my generation. But, at 16, I bought my first Mini, which was 150 quid out of a field, and it had more holes in it than Mini. And I remember it was clinging onto its MOT by the skin of its teeth. And it was so bad that me and my dad actually sellotaped bin bags over the holes and took it with it literally had days of MOT left on it to a mini show at Gaydon, and we did the parade of getting the gated in for this mini show with bin bag sellotaped all over it to keep the water out. And over the next year, I kind of learned how to build cars with virtually no tools. I had bits and bobs of a 1/2-inch socket set and whatever Dad had begged, borrowed, or amassed over the years tool-wise, and we started putting this car together and learn how to weld it all up. And obviously I was going to modify it, and at that time it was kind of motorsport was the thing that really captured my imagination, and it was kind of as much as about wanting a Mini, it was kind of what the Mini did. It wasn't from I want to go to car shows with it and have a cork board out the front and pictures of all the things I've done to it and brochures. It was about, these cars handle, they're cheap, they're light, they're fast when you modify them. Got my hands on a Dave Vizard's Tuning the A-Series book, and that was it.
Look, yeah.
He's got a lot to answer for us, Dave. He's got a lot of answer. There's a lot of HIF 44 carburetors that have been badly filed by people in dark garages over the years, which is why you can't get them anymore. They're really expensive when you do find them. So yeah, that first Mini, a 1-litre City E, ended up as a roll cage, spot lamped, bucket seated, adjustable suspensioned, eventually flip fronted 1275 death trap.
Nice. So you came in quite hard, really, for a first car. It sort of it evolved quite rapidly by the sound of it.
It did, yeah, and it was great. All my friends. It was kind of sort of sixth form by then. They all kind of borrowed their mum's Fiesta and stuff, and had kind of really low-powered, non-interesting stuff. But there was kind of the loophole still existed that classic cars were kind of really cheap to insure and own, even as a 17-year-old. So my first car had a roll cage in it, and I remember the guy from Co-op Insurance, because you had like a local insurance rep, just came to look at it, and he sort of went, "Yeah, that's all right." And I know he wasn't sure, but somewhere deep down, I just believe he'd seen this like 17-year-old lad that spent a year and every penny he could earn at his weekend job at a supermarket to build this car, which was his everything. And he sort of just made it happen for me and made it insurable and all that. So, I used to race around in that, and it was great until it all fell to bits.
Well, eventually, all race cars do fall to bits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not a slight upon your building skills. So the first time I met you, you were living in the illustrious city of Swansea at university studying motorsport. It sounds like there's a very direct route from your interest in your Mini to that.
Yeah, there was. So I found myself at sixth form doing various things just to cover all bases, because I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up, or even if I really wanted to grow up. So, things like physics and computers and all that sort of stuff. And then it kind of came to leaving sixth form time, and I really had to do something. And I just had no interest in anything at all other than cars. It's just an absolute obsession. So I sort of looked around at what sort of car things there were to do at uni, and it was Swansea Institute at the time. I think it's Swansea Metropolitan now, but they actually did a motorsport course, and it was supposed to be the best one in the country, and it was kind of enough of a bet hedging that there was an automotive career in it the other side. But more than that, it was just cars and going fast and making noise and all the reasons behind doing it. So I did that, and I also had a friend that was going as well. So that kind of sealed the deal, and I was in, and I was off, and I was living in Swansea.
And then you met up with some other interesting people while you were there, which is nice, who you may or may not get on the podcast at some point. I'm hoping we will. Our good friend James Hill.
Yes, still in touch.
In
touch with James, very much so.
It's a good course, from what I understand. It seems to have a good reputation for turning out reasonable people. So from there, we'll come back to your cars in a little bit, because that's kind of the meat and bones of the Rob Richardson experience. But so from the Swansea Institute, you graduated, and then you did what?
Yeah, so I finished uni and was really lucky. So I'd done a summerish placement for Johnson Murthwaite Motorsport. So that was historic Fords, basically Mark 1 Cortinas, Mark 1 Escorts, and all that sort of stuff. So I'd had this flavour of motorsport, and it was brilliant, but it sort of wasn't really where I wanted to go. And the reasons for that are sort of selfish, because when you have a career in motorsport, you've got to be really kind of focused, and you spend long hours building the cars all week, and then you spend all weekend racing. And I really selfishly sort of didn't want to build cars for anyone else. I was, this hobby was all I wanted to do, and I wanted to build my own cars. So I sort of was of the opinion at that point that kind of wasn't where I wanted to go. And then by pure chance, a guy, he was like a senior lecturer called Malcolm MacDonald, and he was a well-known legend.
The singer?
No, fortunately not. But he had worked at Lotus and done all sorts of stuff. So he had all these industry contacts and stuff. Basically, got approached by a guy that owned a consultancy company for OEM manufacturers into kind of the serviceability of their cars. Got in touch with him and said, look, have you got any people that you really would recommend or would put forward for an interview? And of course, at this time I was a bit worried, because everyone was doing Formula Student, and that was like really techie and all that sort of stuff. And I remember I was in one workshop changing the gearbox in my Chevette rally car while they were all in pulling late nights on Formula Student, and I kind of thought, well, that's not what I want to do, but Chevettes and rallying are fun, so I've probably made the right decision for me. But where it'll pan out career wise, who knows? Because that was a good sticker for your fridge if you'd done Formula Student. Anyway, so long story very long. I had an interview with this guy, and it was the most surreal interview of my life, because it was in a really fancy restaurant in Swansea, which is somebody who just lived on 5 kilos of pasta and tomato sauce a week as a scumbag student, because all my student loan was obviously frittered away on cars and parts and things. I've never really been in a fancy restaurant in Swansea, but it all went well. And over this big bowl of mussels that he was eating his way through, said, yeah, you've got the job. And that was to go and work at Jag Land Rover, obviously in the West Midlands, which was right by where I lived as well. And it was in the service department, so working on kind of future service stuff. So how the cars are put together and how they go apart and how you service them really efficiently and all this sort of stuff. So it was kind of right up my alley, because it was sort of all the stuff I enjoyed doing with classic cars, but it was influencing engineering into the future to how the cars are designed and built and engineered so you can take them all apart as well.
Sweet. So if anybody's got a Jaguar out there that they're finding really difficult to get at the bits of the packaging and trying to get to the right parts, Rob's on Instagram.
Yeah, don't put my phone number or email address on this, whatever you do.
That's great. It's an ideal job, influencing the future. I like the thing. So let's go back a little bit to your cars. So you had your Mini.
Yep.
And you've had a couple of Chevettes. So what was the order of your Chevettes? Did the Chevettes follow the Mini?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. So when I had my first Mini, I was at a weird sort of blinkered point where all I was really interested in was Minis, and you could have parked a Ferrari 250 short wheelbase next to me and I'd have been like, well, that's interesting, but really it's only Minis for me, which I sort of look back on fondly, because now I sort of want everything and I need to modify everything, and I've not got enough space and enough garaging, and I'll end up renting units and having things at friends' houses and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, at that time it was kind of Minis, and my next Mini was a 72, but it was a Mark 1 backdate, and it was on 10s, and it had like the Speedwell interior. I did all that on it, and I built a 1380 engine for it out of various bits and donor cars, and it had loads of really tasty stuff in it, like carbon fibre Windsor push rods and all sorts of stuff. But there was sort of never enough money to really see it through. I remember I rebuilt the engine for it, and it was all steel strap bottom end. It was kind of the dream. And I rebuilt the engine on it because it had a rattle. And when I say rebuilt the engine, I was sort of still at uni, so it was on a piece of cardboard in my parents' carport. I didn't even have an engine stand, but I learned rebuilding engines on the 1380A series. Put it all together, and it still rattled, and I still wasn't sure why. But I think it had quite a big cam in it and standard rockers, and they didn't like each other. But I remember phoning my friend up that I was also at uni with, and I said, "Look, this engine's back together. It's kind of running. This car is so fast that I'm pretty sure it's going to go bang. So just come out with me in it and let's go for a drive and kick its head in, because you will not believe how fast this thing is. It's unbelievable. And if it goes bang, I just want someone to have witnessed it, because it was kind of built on a shoestring." And we did, and we took it out for a razz, and we span it, and were hooligans, and it was great. So it will, live on in memory. But eventually that ate so many gearboxes, because I could never afford a proper gearbox to take the power. It ended up laid up in Mama and Papa's garage for 6 months, which was a bit sad. At the point I had to take a National Express bus back to Swansea, and I thought, this has gone too far now. So I got enough money to put a cross pin diff in it, and sadly sold it, but that was all right. So then my kind of eyes were open through uni and rallying and all that sort of stuff to other cars, and I've sort of done my time with minis and got as far as I wanted to go. And that's when Chevettes turned up. So my friend had a Mark 1 Ford Escort, and I've always sort of, for no real reason that I can explain even now, my dad sort of had two opinions that he really pushed on me. It was football's rubbish, which has kind of stayed in good stead, and also he never liked Fords. And so that when everyone else was getting Mark 1S and Mark 2 Escorts to go rallying, I sort of was like, well, I'm not going to Ford. I've had them subsequently, but and there's nothing wrong with them at all. But then the Chevette on paper seemed like a great option, because it was coil springs at the back. It was, a really successful tarmac rally car. It was a bit left field. There weren't many people doing anything with them. I really liked this underdog history, because it wasn't an Escort, and there was dealer team Vauxhall, and it was a few good men with moustaches digging in their own pockets to go racing. And it really felt like, these are cool cars, and they were really simple, really light, really spacious for carting stuff around in. And so that's what I ended up with. My those of you who were on the forum will remember it well. I think if you search for DTV Evo 2 Vauxhall Chevette, you can see where I was in my head. I was Tony Pond. I just couldn't grow a convincing enough moustache. I started building. I built the Chevette, and it was all. I did the Swansea Institute navigational rallies in it as well. I think I won. I was the winning driver in 2006, which was quite nice. In the Chevette, which ended up roll caged and spot lamps and bucket seats and harnesses, which is a bit of a theme. It was my everyday car. I drove it absolutely every day, and I crashed it, and that was all very sad. So at the time, they were still cheap cars, so I went and bought 2 more Chevettes to fix it. one was the 170 quid, and it was the now infamous Euro Rat Chevette.
Yes.
Which sort of all the things I've built and all the details I've done, and learning to paint and build engines and weld and fabricate and order rare parts, was probably the most famous car I ever had.
Well, I'm going to come on to that later. I think there's a reason for that, but we will be revisiting your illustrious history of building a Ratlook Chevette at some point.
Yeah. So that was Chevettes, and then where did we go from there? I think I sold the Chevette, so the red rally car got fixed up, and I decided to sell that. And I was having I have these cyclical waves of I should have a reasonably sensible everyday car. So the one I sort of don't talk about isn't the Skoda 120 Estelle. I'm out and proud about that. It's the Rover 114 GTA, which on paper, in my youthful snake bite addled brain, was sensible for commute, because it's 164 miles each way to Tamworth to Swansea, which is where I was living at the time, and I used to do the journey quite a lot because I'd go back to mum and dad's to work on cars and things, and see mates. So I was probably doing that once a fortnight. It was quite a big trip anyway. So in my mind, a Metro was just the development of the Mini, and it's got fuel injection and that's good, and a K series engine and they're dead good, aren't they? And it's got seats, and this one had electric windows, and it was a bit sporty. And I thought, well, I'm not going to leave it alone, so I'll mess with it and lowered all the hydrogas suspension and pumped it up to 600 psi and put GTI wheels and tyres on it, which were 175 versus 165, so it was grippy and pointy and stiff and handly, and it was all really good. It wasn't, which was when it did the old K series thing on me and blew its head gasket and filled the header tank with oily milkshake. So
nice.
Which wasn't great, especially changing the head gasket in the sideways driving Welsh rain in the street, which was inevitably how all the major repairs were carried out at the time. So that was short-lived. That was a number of weeks. I think I put a head gasket on and get rid of it, and thought that was a horrible mistake.
I've made a terrible error.
This was a terrible error of judgment, and well, never going back there. So I think I bought a 106 XSI. For 400 quid with no V5 off a terrifying man in Merthyr Tydfil who ran an army surplus store. But I needed a car.
Someone died to get you that car.
It was terrifying. I was too frightened not to buy it. But to be fair, true to his word, he did actually post the V5 on.
Oh,
and I got it. So it all ended up being legit, even though it was quite weird circumstances. So I still lowered it and put a stupid exhaust on it because I can't help myself. But that got me to and from home, and basically emptied all my belongings out of uni in it. The rear beam collapsed, and it sort of died a death and was sold for pennies. But that was about the time the KP30 came on the scene. This is the car that changed everything. There are these forks in your life where everything, you go one way or the other, and all things change. And that car, and that's why it's still with me today, 15 years later, when I'm terrible for buying, doing up, modifying, messing with, racing around and selling cars in a summer, has always stayed with me because of the huge kind of sentimental value. So that car did end up being my everyday car. As I started my new job working at Jag Land Rover out of uni, and I think there's a thread. So when I got it, I bought it from a guy called Tony King in Bournemouth, and I'm still kind of Facebook in touch with Tony, but he's a really good guy. He's really passionate about Japanese cars, and he'd had a few of these KP30s.
I did not know you bought that off Tony King.
It came from Tony King.
I have learnt a thing today.
Yeah, he's done some really, really cool cars. Cool cars. So I bought it off Tony King, and it was rattle canned in red oxide paint. It had a cream Dulux stripe over the top, 2 seats in it that were hammered, not much else. It's original 996 engine. It was originally kind of like a baby sicky, yellowy, browny green underneath. It had Lotus twin cam steels on it, real life Lotus twin cam steels. And it was just the coolest thing ever. So I remember at the time I was working nights at a supermarket to kind of make ends meet, and to pay for it. The car was 600 quid when I bought it. So I paid Tony 600 quid for it, and I didn't even have 600 quid. So the money was borrowed off my then girlfriend's credit card. It wasn't, to borrow the money to buy the car, because it was just, the best thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. and yeah, we drove. So I worked 2 night shifts back to back, and then I was still in Tamworth, Birminghamish, and the car was down in Bournemouth, and I remember being the most tired I've ever been in my life. But I drove down in the then 106 to pick it up, and my dad drove the Toyota back, and I drove the 106 back, falling asleep at the wheel quite terrifyingly. So that's how it came to be in existence and in my life. And then I think there's probably a bill thread kicking about that I very quickly, because I had a bit of time before my new job started, kind of rebuilt it all and modified it and painted it, and it still had its original engine at that point, but got it tidied up and got it on the road, and it was still on the steels, but I put some Cobra seats on it and we painted it white, which was kind of the whole JDM thing, which was really, it was just the best thing ever at the time. I'd been minis are the best thing ever. Then I was like, I like motorsport and rallying, and then there's like, wow, the internet has given me Japan now, and Japan does everything, and it's so much better. It was like punk rock music I discovered for the first time when I found Japan. So I was like, yes, I need in on this scene.
These are my people.
Yeah, these are my people, and what they are doing is incredible. So unable to find a KPGC10 for 600 quid bought on a credit card. This weird Toyota that I'd never seen before was kind of the next best thing.
It's an interesting thing, because in some ways it epitomizes the Japanese scene in the UK, in that it's not the obvious one. It's not. I mean, we have A86 scene and all that kind of stuff, and there are 240Zs, but a lot of the stuff we have over in the UK is not the same stuff they build and modify in Japan. You'll find a few people will, but it's not the same kind of thing. And I really like that about it, because it is built to the standard of a car that they would build in Japan, but it's not the car they would necessarily choose to build.
Yeah,
which I think is fairly indicative of the way the UK Japanese scene is, and slightly wider in Europe as well, but definitely in the UK, because we haven't got the base models left anymore, because they got scrapped or exported or bang erased. So you just do with what you can, and that's what you found, and that's what you could afford. And now you have a car that wouldn't necessarily look out of place turning up at Moon Eye's All Odd Nationals, but you built it in your garage in Tamworth.
Yeah. And I always remember, it was an absolute honour and a privilege that James, when I was doing stuff for retro cars, James Littman actually shot the car. And at the time, my parents' house had there was the house, and they had a bit of a gravel driveway, and then opposite they had this garage and a carport, and which was a massive enabler for all my car play. So my mum is equally responsible as my dad, because she just let me destroy her house and do all this stuff, which was wonderful. But we set it all up, and at the time I also had my one MX-5, which was an ex-Frog Eyes Unos in blue with SSR Mark II wheels, and we sort of set it all up to look like a tiny backstreet Japanese garage, and did this really awesome shoot. But that was a long time ago.
I know James Littman has gone on to bigger and better things than working for obscure car magazines.
Yeah, I don't think he's
the right for
doing
himself.
cash in hand shoots for the likes of magazines like Retro Cars anymore. I think
No,
Bentley and Rolls Royce phone him these days. Or
yeah, onwards and upwards. So tell us about the MX-5 actually, because I remember you having this car. I saw you run it at Brands Hatch, I think, where you got black flag for going a little bit sideways, a little bit accidentally.
Yeah, Retro Scene magazine was there, wasn't it?
Yeah, a little bit, and whatever that was. That's another domain I've lost. I kind of remember this car, and it's a thing, but it's subsequently talking to people. I don't know if you know this, your MX-5 build is like super influential for loads of people that build MX-5s. So do you know that? That's like when I talk to people, they're like, "Oh, do you know that blue MX-5 that Racer 86 built?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know that clown. He's awesome."
That's amazing, because it had totally passed me by. I remember being on kind of MX-5 forums and stuff for bits and posting pictures and the odd picture on Driftworks and that kind of stuff, because that was sort of what I was into. But I mean, that car came about by chance as much as anything. I was, by this point, absolutely obsessed with Japan, mountain racing, all that kind of stuff. And this car came up for sale, and it had SSR Mark II wheels on. And I thought, I can't believe it. They're SSR Mark II wheels. Nobody has SSR Mark II wheels in 13 by 6.5, 4 by 100 PCD. Let's go and see this car, Dad. So off we did, and it was literally abandoned in someone's front garden with grass growing all around it. But I bought it anyway.
What's the story about that? Like, how'd you go from getting like SSR Mark Ones to just going, I'm not interested in this car anymore?
I've no idea. I think someone had imported it, having fancied the idea of a little convertible for the summer. But when it kind of turned up, it was really noisy. It had a virtually straight through centre exit exhaust on it and various other bits. It needed some love, but it had these wheels on, so I basically bought it because of the wheels it had on it. But it turned out to be a pretty solid car. A lot of them, they all rot the sills out of the drain holes, and they don't like English winters and all that sort of stuff. But it was actually pretty good, and I don't think it'd been here this long. And then you start to notice things on it, like it had the mirrors, the door mirrors had been removed, and instead of filling the holes, they put these plaques over them, and it was Frog Eyes, which is like a big Japanese roadster club. And JDM fanboy was absolutely going mad for this car. I couldn't believe it had like a UNOS dealer sticker on the back, and all these little bits and details were there. So a lot of what I did was kind of bring it mechanically back up to scratch, give it a good clean up, some paint, detailed all the engine bay, fitted coilovers, some better tyres, lowered it. And then I think I kept that car about 3 years, and I put 60 or 70,000 miles on it. It was my everyday car. And do you know what? It never missed a beat at all. I think I put 3 gearboxes in it. So
it never missed a beat. It never missed a beat other than the gearboxes you need to replace.
yeah, other than 3 gearboxes. But it was more because they were noisy rather than they actually failed. But it never left me stranded, and it had a pretty hard life, because I had a great country lane commute to work at the time. So every day it was 10 tenths and saw the rev limiter, and I put a bucket seater in it, and then a Pexi RSM. Which was meant for a slightly newer car than the Mark 1 MX-5. So I had to get my brother, who's an electronics genius. We've taken 2 very different paths in life, to kind of work out what all the inputs and outputs were from the ECU. And we managed to solder it in. So this Apexi RSM lit up, and it told you revs and speed and all this sort of stuff, which was just one of those cool things. And it just had 1 bucket seat in it and a hard top, and it was blue and a splitter, and it scraped, and there was zip ties, which was fashionable at the time, and a subway hanger off the back that I believe I got through you at some point. I believe so. Yeah, still got them. They never went with the cars. They're hung up in my garage right now. And I did huge miles in it. I had to do 2 cam belts in it because I've done that many miles in it. It was brilliant. I moved house with it with a mattress on the roof. I used to carry my BMX in it. I used to put my mountain bike on the hard top with a inflatable roof rack and all sorts of stuff. And that was my car. It was great.
Yeah. No, as I say, it seems to have become an influential car, but it's a sort of a testament to your eye for stuff. In fact, that's actually where I was going to swing around back to your Euro rat style Chevette, but also just about everything else, the JDM stuff. We'll come on to your Herald and things at some point, but that's definitely included in this, and your desire for those strange rear engine German things, and various other things. You always seem to be 1 step ahead of everything. And I don't mean that in like a planned way. It's just like you're wherever the zeitgeist is going with cars, or at least older cars, you're kind of already there. And I don't want to go, how do you do that? Like whether you've got like some kind of insane mind. It's more like, where are you absorbing your influences from? Like, so when you're looking around at car stuff, where are you looking, and what catches your eye, or what will catch your eye on a regular basis?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Yeah, the thing was, it has to be said. So at that time, my car world was well exploded at this point, and the Japanese scene, JDM stuff was absolutely kind of, it took over, but still massively interested in everything, and kind of being on Retro Rides, the forum fueled that. I mean, that was the place for all of it, wasn't it? You go on VZI to look at all the Volkswagen air cooled stuff, and I love, you kind of love all that. And there was huge amounts of those influences in the Euro Rat Chevette. That was just an air cooled VW kind of look car at the end of the day, but wasn't an air cooled VW. But yeah, look, all sorts of forums, and you trawl through Minkara car view. Is that how
Yeah, yeah.
you kind of look at all that sort of stuff, and these cars are sitting right, and that looks cool. And there was kind of no scene for it all really that brought it all together cohesively, apart from kind of Retro Rides and us lot that were all kind of sharing pictures and fueling each other's interests, and you just couldn't get that kind of complete mix of scenes anywhere else. And then kind of Retro Cars magazine came in, and that sort of solidified things as well, and the shows were starting to get a bit that way, because it was sort of all bubbling up under the surface, wasn't it? And it was kind of all there. And I think the internet was a pre-social media internet was a real great, I just used to sit for nights on end, and that's sort of where the blogging thing came out of as well. Just trawling the internet for inspiration and sites. And there was like clean.be as well.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
Edition 38 and clean.be. So that was a real, those guys were doing some amazing things with Opals, and still to this day I'd love an Opal Kadett on Tremont wheels or HTNs or something, in a lovely pastel colour, and the interior done to match, sort of thing. Those kind of influences really stuck with you. So yeah.
And then you sort of disappeared off into the world of proper classics, although you maintained the Rob Richardson painted lowering and sticking wheels on it in an expert manner, which was sort of slightly more, it kind of predated Petrolicious-y type stuff, but like it came along at a similar kind of time, and it's that kind of movement as well. Like you were sort of firmly ensconced in our weird little retro world, and then this sort of Petrolicious stuff sort of bubbled up to the surface, and you were kind of already there because you had your Herald on, tastefully lowered on its wide steels, and with its nice interior and its tweedness and all of that kind of business.
Yeah.
And that was just always interesting to me that you're one like not light years ahead of everyone else in terms of like a Troy Trepanier style, I'm inventing the future, but like more a kind of wherever it's kind of going, you're kind of already one step a step into that direction, which I always find interesting. I find people like that very interesting. It's not, I don't ever think it's a planned or structured thing. I just want to know how your brain works.
Yeah, no, I'd love to tell you there was a plan and structure, but it was kind of, it's all a bit of a fluke, isn't it? I started getting really into for want of a better genre description, the kind of Goodwood revival style of car, and I'd been very kind of 70s focused, but then you kind of, where'd you go from here? And you start to look at 60s cars. And I guess in my brain, the kind of turning point was going from, I was really interested in going fast and making cars fast and pointy and handly, and that was the ultimate goal. And they had to look cool as well, but that was like a function over form thing. And then actually it's sort of shifted, and I think I'm right the other end of that spectrum now with what I'm into and where I am with cars, and that'll probably come out when we start talking about the 911 and why that went. In as much as I want a car that delivers an experience, and that experience isn't necessarily going fast. And once you get into kind of the 60s stuff, you're driving along in this car, at 30 miles an hour, and my Herald was case in point for that. And the thing is just bristling, and you're just having an adventure at really kind of low speeds. And everything you do with it, whether just going to the shops, and it's a cliche, but you use them in normal life for commuting or shopping or whatever as your car, and you kind of the proper time machines. And I wanted to do something Goodwood, but didn't have a Goodwood budget. But the Triumph Herald was sort of overlooked, and sort of still is, for a 1960s car. They're no money.
Yeah, you can pick them up ridiculously cheaply. I always wait to go onto like eBay or something and look at them and go, okay, yeah, they're all 10 grand now. Yeah. But that's never happened.
It's like I don't tell anyone, because I've still, I still want to go back there eventually. That is, you should never go back, but I would 100% go back, and I'd have spent a lot of time trying to find my Herald again.
You should definitely get another Herald, and I can point you in the direction of people that can provide you with a Coventry Climax engine. Just throwing that out there.
Ooh, I can't remember who did that conversion. That was a real thing. Was it
That's
Brabham?
Yeah. So my dad has a story. I'm going to derail your podcast very briefly and tell you a story that's awesome. My family's from in and around Epsom area in Youghal, and the Brabham's showroom or factory was nearby. And my dad remembers it shutting down and them just selling stuff out the back of the door, and they were selling Brabham's Heralds and stuff out of the back door. Apparently one of the ones that got sold, my dad eventually insured, I think, from what the story, or he knew the person that got it. It lived around that area for a little while before disappearing off somewhere. So
he's not still got that in a shed somewhere, has he?
No, my God, could you imagine that? Sadly, I think that was a long time ago. My parents have never really moved, so I think that car would sadly be long gone. Although I should double check with him in case it's been inherited somewhere. Because he told me that story many years ago, which is why I worry about misremembering facts on it. But he told me that story, and I was like, Brabham's Heralds, that's pretty cool. And then I looked them up, and I was like, that's vanishingly rare. It's not even like it's a thing that, there's a few of them.
There's hardly photos of them.
Yeah.
I think Speedwell did some bits for them as well. That's kind of, they're really associated with Minis and VW Beetles, but I think the Speedwell did some suspension stuff, I think.
Let's all go out and buy Heralds and make cool
don't
ones.
Buy Heralds. Nobody buy Heralds. I'd like Heralds to remain cheap because I desperately want another one. And really interestingly, so I sold mine heartbroken and with a lump in my throat for no good reason, after having it for quite a long time for one of my cars. And I spent 5 years trying to find it, and every now and then I post on social media or a Herald club on Facebook or something and say, I don't know if anyone's seen this, TAL822G, my Herald, really sentimental, means a lot to me. I'd love to get it back one day. If anyone knows where it is, let it go. And I'd left it for probably a couple of years, and then I just got a direct message on Instagram from this guy, and it's just like, hiya, I think I've got your Herald. I just wanted to let you know it's still in good hands. Like, yes, amazing. Like, send me pictures, and then we've had this bit of back and forth, and then the plan is to go and visit it eventually, but obviously all this has happened, so travel's a bit weird at the minute. But hopefully this summer at some point I'll actually get to go and see it again. See what it's like. So there you go, we'll be reunited.
You should take a camera and make a video for Retro Rides.
Yeah, I could do. Yeah.
Maybe I'll get Jason on the case. He can come and worship you in your MX-5. Shout out to Jason. It's interesting that you go all in on something. I think that's probably fair to say. So you kind of like all in on minis until you built what is obviously a ridiculous mini that could have exploded any minute, and then you kind of went on the high-speed tarmac rally type stuff, and then you kind of all in on the JDM kind of thing, which actually really is a sort of JDM, or Japanese at least, trait. It's like to go 100% into something. We had a conversation a little while ago talking about just how well they build minis for a car that wasn't built in Japan. It's like they build them out of all of the right parts.
There's an amazing Instagram account called Caroline and George. just check it out. If they just do the most beautiful minis and British cars. But anyway, carry on.
Superb. No, yeah, can have a look at that. And then, so you've done the same with you went all in on the kind of the Goodwood look. What Retro Ride would describe as the cafe racer / gentleman racer look. We have a thread about it.
There is a thread.
Go and look in there for inspirations. Then the 911, where did that come in? I remember you buying that car, but I don't remember much preamble to it.
Yeah, so there's been 3 Porsches in my life. So
oh yes, we've got to talk about Melons. I forgot about that.
Melons, yeah, that's another car that's lived a life and legacy. So should we do Melons first?
Let's do Melons first.
So Melons was a white Porsche 94 2-litre. So the registration was SNO 73 M.
W.
I think. Yeah, W. That was it. W. Which obviously upside down read Melons perfectly, which was just the most brilliant thing ever. And people at car shows used to, in the night, turn the number plate upside down, and I didn't notice, and I never got caught by the police, which was great. So yeah, always wanted a Porsche, but at the time, just from reasons of admiration for engineering, they're generally really cool. It felt like a bit of a coming of age step up almost, graduating to something from Stuttgart. It just sort of felt special at the time, and the lowest rung on the ladder was the 2-litre 924, so that was inevitably where it was. And you spend your entire time telling people it's not a van engine, it's got a different inlet manifold, and it's a really good GT, and the transaxle cars handle so well, and and it's all true, but you always defending yourself for not having a 911. But yeah, that got modified, so that was an ex-concourse car, which is a bit sad because I cut the arches out of it and dropped it on some Compomotive CXs. It was something they were 7.5 in the front, 9 inches wide in the rear, and did all coilovers and changed all the interior. And that was my everyday car, so I made that into my daily driver. And it was a really, really nice car. And this is the kind of way I dragged my parents on this journey with me, because I was always using their facilities, and I'd come home and I'd be like, Dad, I've bought this immaculate ex-concourse Porsche 924. I want to put stupid wheels on it and cut the arches out of it and mess it about. And instead of saying you don't want to do that, why would you do that? It sort of helped me. I think I just sort of took him with him, and he came with me on my madness, which is brilliant. So that car ended up like that, and I daily drove it, and it was fantastic. Though K-jet injection wasn't so fantastic, but that I had that on the 911 as well. So that got sold, and I sold it to a friend who I worked with, who sold it to another friend who I used to work with. Weird. And then it disappeared, and then it literally reappeared 1 street away from my parents' house by pure coincidence. And the guy who owns it now, Mick Armstrong, has still got it. He's had it a long time, and he's done all the right things with it. It's exactly as it was in terms of all the bits that I put on it, the wheels, how it sits, exactly how it was. But he's just done everything nicer, and it's got a nice exhaust on it, and it's all been, the paint's all been spaffed up again, and he really looks after it, and he takes it to shows, and it's still doing the show scene now. And I got to drive it again, and it was, so I had a bit of a reunion with that car as well, which was good. So then there was loads of stuff in between and after that, but eventually I'd always wanted a 911. Everybody says that. Poster boy. It was either a Lamborghini Countach or a 911, but fast Beetles were my thing, but always completely unattainable. Market was, so we're probably talking, when did I have it? Probably five years ago, just over 5 years ago now, when I bought it. So market was all bubbly and on a one-way trend, and when I bought it, it was probably twice what it was the year before, and it was a case of getting on. And the only way I did it was by being completely frivolous, and basically when I sold my first house, I took the equity out of my first house. And when I, moving up on the property ladder, what I did was get the biggest mortgage I was allowed on the house I then bought, to free up loads of cash and bought this 911, which was a 78 SC, but it was all right. So it was black, which I wasn't keen on, but looks dead good. And I only didn't like the black because it always looks dirty and it's scratchy and blah, blah, blah. But on the car, it looked awesome. It was left-hand drive, German market car, no sunroof, 3-litre. SC's 78 SC was kind of a 1 year only thing, so that was good. It was rough as, but that was kind of the price point I could get in on, and I knew I was going to do all the work on it myself. But it had some of the right parts, so it already had expensive stuff like the brakes had been done, it had Bilstein dampers, it was on 15 by 7 and 8 Fuchs wheels, which were, you know, I think you pay about £3,500 a set for an unrefurbished set now, you know, and it had all these on. So I was like, right, well, I can make something out of this, you know, that aligns to where I want it to be without it sinking me. Yeah, it was an XSVP car. So I think he took it in as a debt and was doing bits and bobs with it. So it was a background car. So it ended up with all these great parts on it. But I'd never really done anything with it, and the interior was wrecked and everything. And then I sort of just did my normal thing with it, which was kind of go through it top to bottom. You know, it always had the same wheels on it, and it was black, and it didn't have a ducktail and all that. So visually, it didn't change that much. But you kind of wanted to be able to see it side by side, because I put, you know, bigger profile tyres on it, so the tyres look right. Agonised over decisions like that. Got the ride height right. Rebuilt all the suspension with adjustable everything and fancy bushes, and had a really good alignment done on it, and I just all sorts went through I taught myself K-Jet injection, so I got the injection all adjustable and running really nicely. And then at the time, so, you know, it all ties back into the magazine stuff as well, which I guess we'll talk about, though we might be here forever. You might be getting bored of me, but I ended up, so I'd known Simon Jackson, who was through Retro Cars, who moved on to GT Porsche. So I was then running the car through GT Porsche magazine. So kind of documenting the build of the car as well, and it ended up with this fantastic Dansk exhaust on it, so all the heater deleted, and it was branchy manifolds, and it was super noisy and smelly and obnoxious. And then I did an interior with Cobra, so it was all RSR seats, and we'd had it trimmed in this amazing yellow and red, this Litchfield tartan and prototypo wheel and Renline bracing, and like all sorts of stuff on it. I put an oil cooler on it and a little duct and new oil pipes and all this stuff, and knowledge leads and plugs, and, you know, it just went on and on and on. And it was a really built car over the 5 years, and it was sort of finished. So it ended up being, it was featured in GT Porsche, and it was the cover car on the subscription issue, which
Nice.
was just like holy grail stuff for me, because I sort of don't believe in the internet anymore, and still very strongly, you know, believe magazines are the thing. And, you know, if someone's prepared to chop a tree down and pulp it and make something out of it to show your car off, I think that's a pretty big deal. So that was kind of really special. It was his dream car. So it was really built and really fantastic. I did some amazing trips in it. So we went to Spa Classic in it, and we went the scenic as you can route to Spa, and I did Le Mans Classic in it, and we, you know, came back through Belgium and Bruges and did all this sort of stuff. So I did some really good European trips in it, which is kind of exactly what it was built for. But you can't really say this, because this is, you know, you're messing with holy grail stuff, but I sort of fell out of love with it. Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, as people that are regular listeners to this will know, I own the Porsche no one else likes, which is the 996. And I've never had a thing for Porsches. I like them enough, but I like a lot of cars enough. But I have to say, having now owned and driven one when it occasionally works, and I'm not taking it apart, because unlike Rob, when I take a car apart, it stays apart for a very long time. When driving it, it is a very nice experience. So it's interesting to me that you got your car as sorted as you did, and then were like, nah, why? What's going on with your head, Rob?
So you've got to remember context of the fleet. is something I always come back to. So I'm lucky enough to have 2 or 3 cars at a time. So there kind of has to be this context in the fleet. Anyway, so what it kind of goes back to what I was talking about with the Herald, was you kind of driving that car at 30 miles an hour, and it's just this amazing experience. It's the coolest thing ever. Well, even though the 911 was, stiff, not unpleasant, but it was, on the racier side of suspension setup, and it basically had no exhaust on it. So, when you started it up, it literally rattled the windows, and it was all lightweighted and everything. But people are going to fall out at me for saying this, but it was quite a boring car to drive. Unless
that sound you can hear as the internet drawing breath.
Yeah, I know. Dramatic from ex-GT Porsche writer, cover star, Porsche 911 to the stars owner, sort of thing. It was quite a boring car to own. Dramatic pause, because it was just so good. And unless you were on it 10/10s, when it was, as a driving experience, without trying to be a all journo about it, the way the steering weighted up and all the things about the weight transfer as you drive it, and it was so fast. I mean, it was, as a road car, it was probably 230 horsepower. I'd like to think, with all the stuff and the lightweight, and it scraped under the ton. As a road car, it was absolutely brutal, to drive fast. But how often, these days, I'm built for comfort, not speed, as the saying goes. And like, how often can you really drive a car that fast, 10/10 on the road? I'm not really into track days and all that sort of stuff. So for 95% of the time that I drove it, it was quite boring, because it was just good. Like, this lovely torquey engine that was on fuel injection, that when it was all set up right, just started on the turn of the key, and it drove, and it rode all right, and you could just sort of go to the shops with it without it really being an experience.
Yeah, and they're basically a perfectly capable car. They're like, mine's, when it works, is it effectively my daily driver. And the difference between driving that and driving my Volvo is they both put a different kind of smile on my face when I come back to see them in the train station car park. But actually getting in it and driving it home, it's just a really nice car. But I got mine effectively as a GT for doing European road trips and stuff. That was the main reason to have mine. But if you've got a somewhat leery car that's theoretically leery, but then most of the time it's a bit boring and capable, perhaps that's
I think
was part.
I think it wasn't the car. It was I guess it was my usage profile of the car, and then there's there was kind of all the other stuff on top of it, where if you did have to start doing work on it, it got scary expensive. You change the oil on the Toyota or the Mini or something, it's kind of 30 quid for oil and a filter. You change the oil on the 911, well, you need 14 litres of high ZDDP oil and a proper Porsche filter, because you're talking about a more expensive car that's just got to have all this right stuff on it. And you need 12 litres to fill it, and then 2 litres to as top up over the summer you use it. So like an oil change is a couple of £100, and you put new oil pipes on the side because they get damaged down the sill, and they were £600, and I put an oil cooler on it because it had a trombone cooler, and I think it was about £900 to do this kind of stuff. And then you're watching the values climb as well, and I think that at the point I got back out of it, to have that much money in a car for me there was always a business case behind it, which is a bit sad, but it was also the only way I could do it. And to say I've done it is, I built it exactly how I wanted it to be. For me, it was peak 911. So I had a 69 2.2 for the weekend once, and it was just a really nice car, but it was a Bogo standard car, and it was a bit tired, so it's not a fair example. And a modified one or a tweaked one or a really up to scratch one would be better, but it was a bit beastly. Which isn't a criticism, it was just my statement of fact and opinion. So I'd sort of had that, and getting into a later car, it still had torsion bars, it had the 3 litre, it made all the right noises, it was super fast, it still had all the early dash and like all the nerdy early stuff in it, but was an impact car. So I'd sort of done it. I really enjoyed it. Had some amazing times with it. Built it exactly how I wanted it to be. It looked phenomenal. Went phenomenal. Had some great trips, some great memories. But I had to get out.
Yeah. And
And that
what
was
did you
it.
get into afterwards?
So after
What
that,
does the man that sells the dream Porsche 911 buy after
so
he
the
sold the dream?
so the other car I'd always wanted, which was a BMW 2002. So today is the 12-month birthday of ownership of my
Ah,
2002. So yeah, I very specifically wanted an early car, three-piece grille, round rear lights, carburettor, not injection, because after K-jet injection and making that work, I never wanted to see an injection car ever again. And 70s Kugelfischer is the only thing that's probably more miserable to set up and adjust and live with than K-jet. So yeah, and it's a bit of a weird story how it all came about. So the 911 went, and my wife was kind of pregnant with our first child. Um, so it's kind of like the worst time to buy a car that was going to be a big project to get up to scratch. So I was bidding on, I was still going to do it anyway because I'm reckless like that. But I got into bidding on, DV Mechanics.
no.
So the ex singer guy who had a really famous Petrolicious video for his beige Alpha Giulia saloon,
Right.
Dorian Venzula. I'm really sorry for pronouncing your surname wrong, but anyway, built this lovely Alpha Giulia. He had a 2002 for sale in America, all the right bits on it, California car, beautiful patina. And I thought, this is great. So started bidding on that anyway, lost out on it, and was kind of putting some feelers out and looking at like getting in touch with people about cars. And there was kind of some in the Netherlands and Belgium. They were kind of all around there, but there wasn't really anything in the UK. And then I came across this company called Retro Engineering that I'd never heard of, but turns out they were a BMW 2002 specialist, and they were about 3 miles from my house. They've moved
Oh,
now, but I've lived here for 5 years and didn't know this at all. Anyway, so I just dropped them an email and said, hi, this is what very specifically the BMW 2002 I'm looking for. And I just got an email back going, you won't believe this, but we've got a customer literally looking to sell that car. So I'm looking at getting cars from the States or the Netherlands and stuff and trying to work out how it all works. Heavily pregnant wife. Terrible time to buy a new car, reckless thing to do with your money. But yeah, so this car turned up, and it rolled on the drive 36 hours before she went into labour.
nice. Ah,
So there's a picture of her sat in it on the drive, heavily pregnant, and then it got shoved in the garage and not looked at for a few weeks while I worked out what you did with the human, or chassis number one, as it's known as.
chassis number one.
Yeah. So there you go. So the O2. So over the last year, by pure coincidence again, magazines followed Simon Jackson as he's gone to become editor of BMW Car, which was not planned at all. It was legitimately the O2 was the other dream car I wanted. Has basically gone through not a rebuild, because it was a really nice car, good paint, older restoration, put together by an ex BMW Master Tech, which it probably was, but that sounds like the sort of thing they tell you when you're selling a car, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I stuck with it anyway. And I've basically gone through that car and tried to keep it a bit more period correct. So it's all the suspension's done, bushed coilovers, rear coilover conversion, branchy stainless exhaust system, and a bigger carb on it, and cooling system's all done. It's lowered on Ronald Kleeblatt wheels. So really rare, nice set of wheels that just sort of set the car off right. Cobra RSR, bucket seat, Momo wooden GP wheel, little Hoyer stopwatch on the dash. And it's
Go have the stopwatch.
got to have the stopwatch on the dash. That was in the Herald as well, so that's got history. But yeah, and it really does for me and my, go back to my use case, what I guess the 911 was just a bit too much turned up for 11 to do. So it's a great experience just driving it. It's really usable. It's fast enough. I've done a kind of toe zero alignment on it, so it's pointy and pokey and a bit hangy outy, and it makes great noises. But it's just a lovely car to be in and use to drive normally. So it's kind of ticking those boxes.
There you go. That's what the man that sells a dream car buys: a better car. So I actually have a list of questions for you, and we have only a certain amount of time. So I'm going to fire Darren from Darren Rangasamy, who we interviewed last week for the chain question business. His question for you is: how do you deal with creative block, seeing as you are a creative man?
Do you know what, this is something that I think is worse now than ever, because when it was just a few of us on Retro Rides forum sharing ideas and bouncing things off each other, it was really good, and you could get real kind of clarity and focus of purpose and what you wanted to do, and generally what you were doing, whether it was or it wasn't within your kind of field of view and experience, did feel like you were doing something kind of new and groundbreaking and no one else had done one before. I don't know if anyone else has cafe raced a Triumph Herald before, but at the time it felt like that was quite a new and interesting thing to do. But now, where everything's everywhere, I built my 911, but in the grand scheme of 911s, it was absolutely rubbish compared to everything that's out there and gets filtered through your Instagram feed every day to make you feel inadequate about everything you're doing. So the best, what I really find to get inspiration and get focus is, I now more than ever, I look at old magazines. So be it old 60s issues of Motorsport or whatever, of the period of the car you're looking at, to get a bit of a flavour of what you were, what they were doing to those cars. Then I guess I'm a bit older now than I was when I was doing kind of the wild stuff and hanging all the coolers out the front of the cars and putting 1.85 tyres on 9-inch rims and all that kind of stuff. So where I'm sort of more in tune to is the kind of period correct plus, I like to think when I build a car, my kind of story for the car and kind of what I've done for the O2 is, imagine a works Alpina mechanic owned this 2002 and it was his everyday car, but he had access to all the kind of leftover racing car parts, but he still had to take his wife and kid to church in it on a Sunday. So it's, it's got a racing seat in the driver's seat, but he was doing tourist laps at the Nürburgring on the weekend because, and it's kind of...
I like that. That's a really nice idea. Yeah.
I want to build that story into the car. And I guess that my O2 is probably the best example of that. And I guess my Herald had some of that as well.
That's nice. That's a really nice approach, actually. It's almost like sometimes you hear actors getting interviewed and they got like a character that has a bit of a backstory, but they'll go away and give them for themselves like a whole backstory so that they can imbue it with more character, which is kind of what you're doing with your car. It's like saying, once upon a time it was this, even if it never was, and what would that have looked like? That's a really nice approach. I like that. If you were recommending a first classic to someone, what would it be?
Oh, interesting. So everything's kind of expensive now. So that kind of takes some of the fun out of it, but it also takes some of the viability out of it. So if you could find a Vauxhall Chevette, that'd be a brilliant first classic. I mean, we've talked about Triumph Heralds being great value as well, and do them right. They're they're absolutely bulletproof and they'll look after you as long as you don't let them rot around your ears. But there's loads of stuff, isn't there? I guess more modern stuff now that's not modern anymore, that I still consider modern but isn't. I think of E30. So I had an E30 BMW at one point and I thought, this is a new car. But they're not now, but I guess they're a bit expensive too. If you wanted to go old school, so I've dabbled very briefly with Volkswagen Beetles, and I know it's a bit of a cliche answer.
Well, that's not. Maybe that's because it's one of the right ones.
Yeah, but I actually think, as someone who hasn't been I haven't been a big Beetle guy, but I did it, and I was really impressed with that car. how it was all put together and everything, and had a bit of fun in it. It didn't get a lot of internet airtime, that, so no one really knows I did it, but it was in like a patina 67, bought kind of unfinished off one of the RSVP VW guys, and it was 4-inch narrowed beam and Fouche replica wheels, and it was a really nice car. But yeah, I think they're dead easy to work on, cheap as chips, still find a reasonably priced one. You can do a lot of stuff with them, so that's not a bad shout.
That's a good shout. Let me see. What's the hardest job you've ever done on your cars?
Oh, hardest job. What's brought me to tears?
That's how you know a job's got hard.
Loads of stuff. Yeah, that's the measure. I think rebushing a car. It's dirty, it's miserable. You're always left with a sense that do I really need to do this? But once you've done it and you've fitted some really nice uprated bushes into your car, it makes a huge difference.
I saw a video fairly early on in my ownership of this bloody 996, where someone had taken their car to a garage, I think it was a sponsored video, and got the whole thing rebushed. Like just got poly bushes throughout and new suspension. And when they got it back, they were just saying, even without the new suspension, it feels like I bought a brand new car, like it's straight off the forecourt. And then I looked out into like the effort and cost of getting that done, and then I thought, that's fine, I'll just leave it. It looks insanely hard.
I did the O2 over winter, and it was like, making tools out of threaded bar to get them out and setting them on fire, and just the worst job. But now it's done, it's amazing, and you'll never have to do it again.
That's true. It's a job you do once.
It's a job you do once, and they'll outlive the car, so it's done, and it's a worthwhile job. But yeah, horrible.
Superb. I was going to ask you what your dream build is, but we already know you did it and you sold it. So
I did it and sold it, but I think now money Alpha TZ1.
Yep. Okay. Yep. I agree. That is a legitimate answer. I will allow it. You've recently bought a car, although you don't keep cars for very long quite often. What have you got your eye on at the moment?
At the moment, so my old Herald's still in the back of my mind, and whether buying that will be an option. I've got a Mini at the moment as well. So I've got this 93 Mini that I've sort of backdated to Mark III, that isn't really a internet fame car. It's more of a smashing around summer daily driver, but so it's got some nicer stuff on being a later car, but it's on 10s, and I've put the early lights in it and all that sort of stuff. But deep down I know it's not really the car I want, and I'd always promised myself a Mark I Mini, kind of just to close the book on Minis.
Yeah, so unfinished business.
Nice. There is unfinished business. I've also got a real thing, so this is niche-ish. I really want to get a late 80s Citroen 2CV. So it's the wrong one to buy, but deliberately. So it's got the 602 engine, and it's a bit cheap and cheerful, and then make it look like a Sahara, kind of a Sahara-esque meets 911R meets like gravel push bike.
Okay.
I'll let that weirdness stew, and in my mind it's kind of lifted, skinny tires but sort of knobbly. It's got like 911R rear lights in it, relocated rear number plate, recess in the bonnet for the spare wheel, a roof rack with a jerry can on, that sort of
I got
thing.
You.
Rivets and exposed aluminium and a bit bomber.
So everybody just take note, the off-roady overlanding type stuff is the next thing you need to get into, because that's what Rob's thinking about.
All the cool kids are going up, no one's going down anymore.
Yeah, all the cool kids are literally are going up. It's the overlanding stuff is good stuff. I'm all on board with it. I'm gonna end with, for the time being, what's the favorite car you've had the chance to drive? It could be one of your own, but it could be someone else's.
I'm gonna almost undo everything I've said about the 911 and say the 911 on the right road on the right day was, without a shadow of a doubt, having been lucky enough to drive some really interesting and cool cars, the single best automotive experience you can have. And
there he goes.
Yeah, there is a story. So when we drove to Spa Classic, we got completely lost because we were following a sat nav, and we did this big loop, and we came out on the middle of this closed road, and we all sort of had this moment where we looked at each other and said, well, it's a Sunday, no one's working, the diggers are all there, and the lorries are blocking this road, and it was just this beautiful twisting road up through a woodland and perfect tarmac, and just drove up this road, 1010s, windows down, flat six howling. It was that almost movie moment of that car, and never to be repeated. You'd never do it if it wasn't a flash decision. You're never going up a closed road in the middle of the woods in Belgium ever again. And it sort of closed the book on that car for me, and it was just the perfect automotive nirvana moment, and I had it with it, and that was great. So it helped me let it go.
That's absolutely superb. Well, thank you very much, Rob. I probably would like to have you come back again, because there is much more to discuss about your life with cars. And if you're on your way to go and see the Herald, hit us up, because I think that would make a nice video for people.
Yeah, will do. Thank you for having me. It's been a joyful meander through our mutual history.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. Next time we have Mr. Chris Pollitt of Not Too Grand blog fame, and I think he is also probably known now for doing Car on Classic, because he writes for them quite a lot, and also another old school retro rides person, so as all of the right people in the world are. So we will see him next time, and hopefully have a question for him from Rob. Until then, have a good time.